Good morning and welcome back to another Teaching Sound Doctrine Bible class. As always, want to thank you for being here. Always want to remind you that my email address is at the top of every transcript, along with the link to the website. We also want to let you know that this is going to be our last class for the year. I'm going to take the next few months and do some recuperating and what have you, and get some other lessons ready for January, starting in January. So please take time, go back over these lessons that we've done this year. This is going to be like 136 or 38 videos that we have for the year. So there's plenty of material for you to learn from. And we put a lot of time and effort in this, and we pray that you're getting a lot out of these. Now, last week, I ended the class by saying that there were errors in the King James and other Bibles, and this is a true statement. All Bibles to some extent have some kind of error in them, and that includes the King James and the New King James, also the 1901 ASV. Those three Bibles are the ones that I follow. Now, it's a true statement, but let me clarify what I meant. You see, the so-called translations, such as the NSV, the ESV, the etc., all the quote-unquote new Bibles, they actually change the meaning of what's being written to make it say whatever they want it to say. They want it to fit their premillennial narrative or whatever. And the King James and the New King James and the ASV, they don't do that. They may have like the word Easter in there, which we know Easter is not what it's proclaimed to be this now. But there are other slight variations, but they have nothing to do with the content or the context of what's been written. Whereas these new translations are not translations at all. The NIV and the ESV and so forth are simply interpretations and not actual Bibles. And we've said before that, people say, well, I use the NIV or I use the ESV because it's easier to understand. But what they don't realize is what they're understanding is usually a lie, because it has been interpreted as to what Paul or what Peter or what Luke or whoever said. They're saying this is what we believe they meant, rather than reading it word for word and applying it in that manner. So just in way of clarification, these new translations are not really translations. They're simply a running narrative, a running interpretation of what man thinks and what man wants the Bible to say. So with that cleared up, let's go ahead and get into this Bible study. I told you we were going to look at some questions in this last study. Well, one question is, should we use translations based on dynamic equivalent and philosophy? Well, why would we want to use them? Well, they might be helpful under certain situations. And we must have the proper understanding that these translations or interpretations are simply a running commentary on God's word. They're not actually the Bible. So what we have to be concerned with is a translation writing false doctrine into the text, which is what has been done with the NIV and the ESV, especially the ESV. The NIV started it all, and the ESV has just followed up with it. Now, some might say, well, we can learn the truth from them, which may be true, but about those false doctrines in them, which, if believed, that's going to cause one to be lost, because they're not actually believing the truth. They're not believing the words that God gave the apostles through the Holy Spirit. They're changing it to fit their narrative. We're not saying that everyone who uses one is going to be lost, but if someone reads, believes, and takes action upon a damnable doctrines as these, then they would be lost. And that's why we are so adamant about using a proper word-for-word translation. Now, will sound preachers use unsound translations? My question is, why would they want to? Why use one that's a running commentary and one which inserts damnable doctrines into God's word? Why would they do that? A sound preacher wishes to teach the truth and nothing else. And that's the same for all Christians. Since unsound translations teach false doctrine, we would not use them. And most good preachers, all good preachers in the Church of Christ will use a sound Bible, such as the King James, the New King James, or the 1901 ASV. Now, we might refer to them for study's sake as we would a commentary, but not as our main Bible, because these really are not Bibles. Some would argue that Jesus and his apostles used the Septuagint, which is a faulty translations. Well, it is true that the Septuagint was a very defective translation. It was the Bible of the first century. It is stated that they had God's word, according to Romans 3:2, which says, much every way chiefly because that unto them were committed the oracles of God. So we know that they had the word of God. So thus, we can use faulty translations today. Realize that the Septuagint was the only translation of the day. That's all they had. And it was using the Septuagint, or the original language. They did not have a choice as we do today. Today, we have a better comprehension of language, especially the Greek and so forth. If Jesus and the apostles had many translations as we do today, would they have used the best or one which perverted the text? And begs the next question, do elders have the right to specify what translations to use in public teaching? Well, elders have authority within the congregation. Simply read 1 Thessalonians 5:12 through 13. And we beseech you, brethren, to know them by which labor among you and are over you in the Lord, and admonish you, and to esteem them very highly in love for their work's sake, and be at peace among yourselves. So, if your elders were to say, we're only going to use the King James, well, then we should only use the King James. Or if they say we're going to use the King James and the New King James, well, then you should do so. But if an elder were to come to you and tell you, let's use the ESV or let's use the NIV, well, then you would have to take a stand. You would have to say these are false doctrines. These are not scriptural Bibles. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 7 and 17 says, remember them which have the rule over you, who have spoken unto you the word of God, whose faith follow, considering the end of their conversation. 17 says, obey them that have the rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls, and they must give account, that they may do it with joy, and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you. So if you have elders among you in your congregation, if you have elders, then please be sure that these men know that NIVs, ESVs, RSVs. These are not acceptable as Bible, and they're not acceptable as authority. Now, Michael and I and other preachers all use, we'll go look at other so-called translations. But when we're preaching 99.9% of the time, either out of the King James, the ASV 1901, or the New King James. This is because we want to stick with God's word. You see, your elders have an obligation of seeing that the truth is taught and that the sheep are properly fed. And you can't do that by using a running interpretation of what some man thinks that Paul or Peter or James said. You have to have a word-for-word translation. Now, Acts chapter 20 and verse 28 says, "Take heed therefore unto yourselves and to all the flock over which the Holy Ghost hath made you overseers, to feed the church of God, which he hath purchased with his own blood." Again, an admonishment to elders to stick with the proven, to stick with the tried and true. 1 Peter 5:2 says, "Feed the flock of God, which is among you. Take the oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not for filthy lucre, but for a ready mind." You see, elders have to think of things like, all right, let's say contaminated food must be kept away from the flock, okay? You go to a party, you don't want to eat something that has listeria in it or whatever. And so this is why the elders are there. They're to keep you from eating the wrong spiritual food. They're to keep you from eating the false doctrine that has so easily permeated this world today. They have to stop the mouths of the false teachers. Titus 1 chapter 9, Titus chapter 1 verse 9 through 11 says, "Holding fast the faithful word as he hath been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort and to convince the gainsayers. For there are many unruly and vain talkers and deceivers, especially they of the circumcision, and those whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert the whole house, teaching things which they ought not, for filthy lucre's sake." Elders must stand against this, and as a Christian, you have to do the same. If a false teacher comes in the form of a so-called Bible, they have the obligation to put a stop to it. A false teacher in the form of a Bible is more dangerous than any one person. It would be absurd to say that the elders cannot protect the flock from such perversions of God's word in the form of a Bible, because they can. And I'm hoping and praying that most of you who have elders, that your elders are strong enough to understand that there is no truth in these so-called interpretations. They're not translations. So, in conclusion today, the use of a translation, it would be a matter of expediency. Yet there are some common sense guidelines. While we cannot mark a person or a congregation based on the translation they use, we should be engaged in teaching them the dangers of that translation, which pervert God's word. Satan's trying to destroy Christians. If he can pass off false doctrine in the form of God's word, the battle is lost. Now, no doubt, Satan has used this tactic in fighting against God. With the proliferation of versions comes confusion of God's word, whether accurately translated or not. This leads to the false view that no one can understand the Bible. And we've been over that many times before in past lessons. People want you to think, or preachers want you to think, that you can't understand what's there, that they need to tell you what they think it says. Well, when all the interpretive and paraphrases are included, the NIV, the Living Bible, the Cotton Patch version, the Reader's Digest version, and so on, God's word becomes more convoluted in people's minds. So let us always be careful to fight against all the wiles of Satan, including his use of perverting our Bible. Now, I know this has been a short lesson, but we have to stand against this. Not just our elders, but we as Christians need to arm ourselves with the information needed to prove that the NIV, the ESV, the others that I mentioned here are all lies. And that's basically all Satan can do, is feed you lies. And it's up to you to figure out, well, is this a lie or not? And if it's coming from Satan, you know it is. I mean, these versions, the Living Bible, the Cotton Patch version, and the Reader's Digest version, these are just an abomination as far as I'm concerned. And the NIV and ESV are right up there at the top. So folks, when you think about studying, and when you want to understand God's word, well, make sure that that's what you're reading. Because our King James, our New King James, the 1901 ASV are all very sound versions. And two of those are word for word. And I want to, I want you to go back over these lessons. I want you to study them so that when you meet somebody using these perverted so-called Bibles, that you can explain to them the dangers that they face by using these. It's all right to understand, and these Bibles may be quote unquote easy to understand, but what they're teaching you is false doctrine. And when you allow that to happen, well, then you're putting your salvation at stake also. Now, like I said at the beginning, this is our last class for the year. I thank you for all the people who have come and watched these videos. I hope that you've gotten a lot out of the videos, out of the transcripts that I make available on the website above each video. And I'm praying that you're using these lessons to arm yourself against the wiles of the devil. Put on the full armor of God and be ready to go out into battle. Because that's what these classes are about. These classes are geared more for the Christian than they are for, let's say, the new Christian or someone who's in a lost condition. Not that they're not good for them, those folks, but my lessons are usually geared more toward someone who's been a Christian for a while. I did try back at the beginning of the year to go over some of the basics. Last year, I did a whole series of first principle lessons, which were geared to the new Christian. But these last lessons, especially this year, have been geared more to helping you understand and helping you to be able to apply what you've learned in a manner that will make you able to go out and teach others. So with that all being said, I want to thank you again. Remember, these lessons are on our website. The link to that is at the top of the transcript. If you want to write it down, it's jfmiller.com/online class. That'll take you right to the website. Plenty of good material there. And if you have questions, even though I'm not going to be doing any more classes this year, go ahead, feel free to write. I'll do my very best to get back to you as soon as possible. I want to thank you all. And until next year, may God bless.